Hey everybody, it's Fight Club Hubs. Welcome to another wonderful episode of GVN Live. I am with Jan and Mark B. Writing, and this is the second to last episode of the year before our winter break. And some interesting things happened in the news. A little thing called, Bethesda fucking up royally happened. Fucking up so bad that lawyers are now making commercials about, hey, have you been involved in a scandal from Bethesda? Have you not been getting your refunds? Call now. You may be entitled. No. Jan, you seem very angry. Please, vent.
So, first of all, why? Bethesda, why? I don't understand why this even has to be a thing. But so the 14th of November, about 2 weeks ago, and then a couple of weeks back beyond that, everything kind of seemed to start snowballing. First, we start off with a major company like Blizzard, who basically was like, hey, we're bringing out a new Diablo experience. Oh, and by the way, it's mobile. Who cares? The outright just hate for that is just still vehement with the crowd. But 2 weeks later, we get a release for Fallout 76. And it's like, there's this weird idea, and the people are like, the market is so rich with the idea of new franchises for old IPs in a market that doesn't make a lot of sense for those games. And at this point, it's such a simple market now that with this increasing amount of independent titles on platforms that are easy to get a hold of, like Steam or even on your console, these independent titles they're more engrossing, they're more intelligent in most cases, even for something as simple as like running around and doing something ridiculous in the battle royale genre. It's no longer about quality, it's about quantity. And it's almost like there's this strange idea that people want to be placated with other sequels so they can continue to playing the one or two worlds they enjoy being in. Developers coming out of the forefront, which is probably the worst end of a gaming year that we've seen in the last 5 years, and it's just been going downhill since E3. Fallout 76 in its current release state had a day one patch on PC that was 56 gigs. It was 16 on consoles. The PC patch was larger than the initial install. Physical copies of the game that came with a cardboard cutout in the disc slot, and it gave you the code to digitally download the game.
Gotta push that Bethesda front end.
For a company that re-released a game like Skyrim 6 times... the same game, mind you. The only thing they added was DLC and a version on the Switch.
Hey, I'm still waiting for my refrigerator edition.
It'd probably crash your refrigerator, let's be honest. I
installed Skyrim, it spoiled my milk. What the fuck, Todd Howard?
So, you have this idea of that for 2 weeks now, since this launched, there has been nothing but a plague of problems. Buggy gameplay. You found a person who figured out how to get into the console and do a player command kill on player IDs. Another player figured out how to turn on God mode and couldn't actually turn it off again, so he had to delete the character and start over from scratch. You know, people keep seeing these kinds of things, especially from the companies that are doing it over and over again. Blizzard, Bethesda, Capcom.
Capcom
Let's be honest,
actually has
Capcom
had a
is
pretty.
getting better.
They've had a pretty good year this year. A couple of missteps, yes, this year, but for the most part, Capcom has kind of been working their ass off this year to regain, their trust especially after MVC Infinite.
I blame Marvel mostly for that, not Capcom, but that's beside the point.
And I'm sure Capcom could have ponied up the money to get the Marvel license. And, no. I would say it's more of a Fox problem right there.
Not really. Because none of the Fox properties, except for...
X-Men. And people wanted X-Men in Marvel Infinite.
No, none of the Fox properties, except for Spider-Man, was in Infinite.
That's a Sony property.
It's a Sony property. Well, then, yeah, none of the Fox properties were in Marvel Infinite. None of them. So, anyway... that's why Deadpool wasn't in it.
That's also not a problem with the Fox license. Because that's only for movie representation. They wouldn't have to go to Fox in order to be able to do that.
Right.
Because they didn't have to do it with Marvel vs. Capcom 3. It's a case of Marvel dictating to them what they specifically want to see in the game, and them saying, we don't want to see Wolverine because he's not under our banner. The same way they killed him in the comic book. So it literally would be a Marvel problem.
Exactly.
Okay.
So the thing is that this happens a lot, and so much so that gamers see all these kind of things with issues and bugs and failing and broken bits every single time. And every single time since November 11, 2011, when the very first version of Skyrim came out, people have been looking at it going, maybe this time, like a bumblebee trapped in your home bouncing off the window because it's too dense to realize that it's not going anywhere. Okay? So all of this Fallout 76 hype, all of this great stuff, it's going to be different. It's going to be fine. The beta tests hit. Garbage. Bugs, failings, falling through the world like crazy. I mean, I get that Rockstar has bugs in Red Dead Redemption 2, but let's be honest. Those bugs are funny. And that kind of stuff isn't inherently game-breaking. 76 is inherently game-breaking, and that's bad. And so instead of basically saying, hey, we've got these bugs, we need to make sure that this game launches as good as we need it to launch, we're going to push back the date, we're going to push back everything, and then we're going to release this a little bit later on in 2019 to make sure that it's the gaming experience that you guys wanted.
And that's where I think one of the problems that people don't seem to realize that's involved with this. Bethesda does answer to ZeniMax, who is their publisher. And I think ZeniMax is slowly turning into an Activision, trying to push these big projects from Bethesda out as soon as possible. I don't think they have the patience for a 5 to 6 year game cycle, development cycle from Todd Howard, which is what I think he would need to make these games come out not broken.
So I think that is where some of the issues really come out anyway. Because Fallout 76 was developed by Bethesda Game Studios and published by Bethesda Softworks. It's directed by Todd Howard, and it's still using
I'm sure it's using a dated engine.
22-year-old engine? So no, this was not even touched by ZeniMax. This is purely an in-house only Bethesda game, released as is when it was originally released in an alpha state over a year and a half ago to internal testers. Okay, fine, whatever. So here's another catch. 2 weeks have passed. How much do you think it's going for right now? Oh, wait! That's right. Black Friday was last weekend, wasn't it? Yeah. The game launched at $59.99. And on most online retailers for the entire weekend, do you know how much it was selling for? $34.99. They took 33% off the base price of the fully launched 2-week-old game. Because they knew that if they didn't, there was going to be a lot of really upset fans who were waiting for that game, who didn't get a chance to get it when it launched 2 weeks earlier. But what about the people who just bought it? Oops, sorry. You paid full price. You could have waited 2 weeks and gotten it for cheaper. $34.99 sounds like a great price, too, except for the fact that this is still an early access game. I don't care what kind of a title you put on it. It's a beta. It's an early access game. This is basically the same thing that you could have gotten as an equivalent of a freaking Steam Greenlight game. Every time Bethesda launches a game, I don't care who the publisher is, ZeniMax themselves, these guys are basically turning into EA. Like, they have skipped the Activision level of shittiness and have jumped straight to EA. Okay? Everything that they have done up to this point has been just this absolute ridiculousness of excuse and backpedal, excuse and backpedal. And guess what? They still haven't fixed the major problems. So, my issue is, why are people having to pay for an early access game that's still in beta? This is a beta. This is a beta. You cannot argue that with me. It is a beta. And I am not willing to spend this kind of money on a beta. I don't know anybody that's willing to spend $50 on a beta. That's ludicrous.
I spent $35 on it, and so far I don't regret it.
See, $35? That's a viable price.
I
But
paid
50?
full price, and I'm not regretting it. I mean, but again, my experience hasn't really been as bad as the internet has been complaining about. And I
But
still
are you
think
playing on PC or console?
PC.
Okay. So
I've only encountered one
of
bug
about-
for myself, aside from the bugs that I saw in New Vegas making a return here, which is the hilarious watching the enemies slide away or slide towards you, which is kind of hilarious.
So
I mean, I do want to note that, just because you're not seeing a specific event doesn't mean it's not happening. So,
I'm not
let's
Yeah, I know.
let's just be sure. Like,
For
the
sure.
internet is almost certainly having the problems that they say they're having. So it's,
absolutely. I mean, I've
Oh
seen
yeah,
plenty
yeah.
of videos.
I'm not going to
I've
deny that
seen-
somebody's going through some shit.
I've seen tons of videos on this, like probably 60 different video sources, all showing relatively the same problems, ranging from simple bugs of not being able to place specific items in specific open areas, trees literally clipping through buildings and blocking complete vision, to people who drop ammo to make space in their bags, it hitting the ground, disappearing, and when the person turns, the ammo takes up the same character space as their avatar and they fall through the world.
This is like fun.
So, and here's the best part. When you die, you don't respawn. So you're stuck. So yeah, this has been a known issue for a while, and there are a ton of problems. They're, worse or better based on just what I've seen over the last couple of weeks. Okay? My biggest issue about all of this is that they're like, we're going to charge full price, and this is a AAA title. No, it's not. This is basically an indie title that you're releasing in a beta state that doesn't have any sensibility about it, because you're like, oh, but it's Bethesda. Bethesda fans love Bethesda games because they can mod it, except for the fact that you can't mod this game. It's an online server-based architecture like general MMOs. The only thing that's stored on the client is your base information, your key bindings, and your login information.
That
Everything
makes no
else is kept on the
sense, though,
server.
considering Elder Scrolls Online allows you to apply multiple mods, mostly cosmetic, in terms of like your interface.
For yourself.
Yeah.
Other people cannot see your mods. And that is the same thing for any MMO.
Oh yeah. I'm just
MMOs
saying,
are
like,
purely clients, or mods
Right.
for MMOs are purely client side. What I'm getting at with this is, as of right now, there are no mod tools in place for Fallout 76. Bethesda has said as such, and they've also stated that they do not currently know or have plans for the modding community to be able to do anything with Fallout 76 at this time. So until we get official word from Bethesda stating that this game can be modded, right now, hands are off. And there's a lot of people who have said as such. There are review platforms and companies who are not even willing to touch this game until Bethesda has fixed enough of the glaring problems to make the game even remotely playable. There are major outlets who haven't even gotten a chance to try to play it because the game literally will not launch for them. That's how broken their copies were.
And I mean, it's worth noting that even with people who have been able to get in and play the game, like, the experience has just, for them, has just been so utterly banal and devoid of anything that makes a Bethesda game that they've just been like, look, we can't review this because there's no game here to review. It's just toddling along until you find the next robot NPC and occasionally doing other stuff. Like, my friend Joel's been playing it. He convinced me to buy the thing at $35, and he was like, look, for $60, I would not have paid money for this. Like, but $35, it's worth it, because it's just like, I don't want to do most of the stuff that it's asking me to do. I don't want to do PvP. I don't want to build a base. And if you don't want to do those two things, there's nothing really else for you to do with it.
I would agree. My biggest issue right now is the fact that it really doesn't feel more like this should have been a problem in the first place. But there's so many problems now at this point that enough people were like, I'm done. I'm just going to refund. I'm going to not worry about it. I'm going to get my money back, and I'm going to wash my hands clean of it. Oh, right. Except for the fact that if you downloaded it, Bethesda won't give you a refund for it because it's not a physical product. So, yeah, that's a thing that happened. So a bunch of people now have reported that they've tried to get full refunds for the game that they just purchased at full price 2.5 weeks ago, and Bethesda's telling them, yeah, we don't have a 30-day return policy. In fact, we don't have any kind of a return policy for any digital product unless you haven't downloaded it already. If you've downloaded it, you're SOL. So much so that, and I linked to this earlier, and we talked about it at the top of the show, that there's actually a law firm. I'm not even kidding. There is an actual law firm that goes by the name of Migliaccio and Rathod, LLP. And these guys are based out of Washington, D.C. Okay? It specifically states Bethesda Game Studios Deceptive Trade Practices Investigation. Migliaccio and Rathod LLP is currently investigating Bethesda Game Studios releasing a heavily glitched game, Fallout 76, and refusing to issue refunds for PC purchases of the game who found it to be unplayable because of its technical problems. While minor bugs and glitches are expected with the release of most new games, Fallout 76 launched with a 56-gigabyte patch that has proven to be but a starting point for the game's problems. Gamers who have tried to receive a refund because of the game's myriad of glitches have been unable to do so since they downloaded the game, leaving them to deal with an unplayable experience until patches bring it back to a playable state. Have you tried to receive a refund for your Fallout 76 purchase? If so, we'd like to speak with you. Please fill out the contact form on our page and send an email to, and it gives their email and their phone number. Committed to consumer protection. The lawyers at Migliaccio and Rathod LLP have years of experience in class action litigation against large corporations, including in cases involving unfair and deceptive trade practices. More information about our current cases and investigations are available on our blog. So, like, that's actually a thing. That's a real thing.
I'm surprised.
And the fact that that even exists in the first place is absolutely mind-boggling to me.
I can't wait to see, like, lawyer commercials in the middle of the day talking about stuff like that. I mean, I made a joke about it at the beginning of the show.
It's like,
but
do you
that's
have
exactly what it's going to be.
If you or a loved one has suffered from mesothelioma, please contact us. Yeah, no, this is the same. You could be compensated for damages. I'm like, wow, that's ludicrous. I mean, maybe I'm getting old. Maybe I'm jaded. Maybe I'm at a point now in my life where I don't understand why it is that a game company would release a game in an alpha or a beta state and charge full price for it.
Because
I come from an era
that for years.
Bethesda's been doing it since Daggerfall. Okay, I get it. Okay? But what I don't understand is why all of these other companies are doing it too.
Because it worked for Bethesda and they made shitloads of money. The
I
problem
mean,
is that back in the day, when you had games that came out before the internet was a thing, the game had to work. If it didn't,
mhm,
you were fucked. Word of
mhm.
mouth was going to destroy your game. And then we got consistent, viable internet connections during the days of, I'm going to say the Xbox 360 onward. And all of a sudden,
Okay.
developers realized, fuck, we can release a game with flaws and then we can patch them out. And I was explaining this to my friend Joel, but this is basically how it works now. When you have a game that comes out, you have to take it to the ESRB and you tell the ESRB, hey, this is the game that we're giving you.
Mhm.
But the problem is you have to get ESRB approval like a month in advance. You have to book like a month out. Even the largest companies have to do this.
Mhm.
So the ESRB doesn't give a shit if this game works. They give no fucks whatsoever about that. Their interest is not, is the game functional? Is the game working? Their entire investment is, if I open the game and 17 titties fall out, that's all they care about. So if you go to them with a version of the game that wasn't the gold, like you go to them with like this basic gold version of the game,
Mhm.
it works ish. And you hand them that and you say, here. And they look it over and they're like, fine, there's no titties. Bam, E for everyone. Have a nice day.
Mhm.
But you can't edit that game. From the moment it gets into a ESRB standard position to the moment it goes to launch, that's the version you're sending out. You can in no way make changes to that game
Mhm.
because it has to be the one you showed the ESRB. So what
Right.
these people are doing is they're getting these games to a point where it functions just enough that they can send it to the ESRB, and then they're saying, well, we got a month, let's work on it. And then you get this day one patch because that's something that they discover that they can do. Games don't have to work on disk anymore because there'll just be a day one patch that's 10 or 15 or 20 fucking gigabytes.
Or
Mhm.
60 gigs.
Yeah, and the bigger problem is that a lot of these developers are starting to get lazier and lazier with it now. They're starting to realize, well, it doesn't have to be working exactly at launch because because companies like Bethesda showed that it was financially viable. If we release this game broken, enough of our fan bots are going to say that this game is still Game of the Year material, and we're still going to get enough sales that we can push this game out the door broken as fuck and we'll make our money, and then in a month when it's working, then like everybody else will come along with it. And this isn't really showing that it's having much of an impact to people, right? Because Bethesda is still a huge multi-million dollar corporation. They are still making all of the money from their shit. Fallout 76 is probably the closest that we've come at this point to them having any type of injury to their reputation. Them refusing to give review copies out didn't do it.
Mhm.
The fact that the Fallout 4 is deeply mediocre as a game didn't do it.
Mhm.
The games that they've pushed out with no review copies that have generally been niche experiences where people actually were like, you know what, I probably would have benefited from a review of this in advance because this is not what I would have wanted.
Mhm.
Didn't do it. So, I mean, maybe Fallout 76 will, but this is the first clear example that we're getting of Bethesda's business practices actually having any type of negative impact on them as a corporation at all.
Mhm.
So why wouldn't you keep doing that? If it works, if it's making you money, you're gonna fucking do that for as long as you can because it works and it's making money.
Yeah, for sure. I think in the long run, I think the biggest issue that I have, and I think the primary problem with Fallout 76 in general, is that it basically came out to this is basically No Man's Sky again.
Except I actually enjoyed No Man's Sky when I played it.
Thank you.
I had no interest in No Man's Sky. I still don't.
Well, I'm sorry that you hate yourself, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's fine. You're allowed to be boring.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. Look,
but like,
it's
here's
the
my
concept
thing.
of what they did. That's
Yeah.
where I have a problem with it. Is just that because they decided that they were going to release this beta version of Fallout 76 to everybody at full price, that's when I take offense. Like you said, $35. Okay, that's basically bargain bin at that point. No one's willing to want to spend more money than that to actually get this game. But $60 at launch and then 2 weeks later it gets dropped. I mean, that's EA levels of shit. Honestly, it really is. And like, there's no reason to have to put, as you've said, and as we know, a dedicated fan base to the Fallout 3 series, the Fallout 4 series, the FPS version that Bethesda's released. People will play the game, as we've seen. They sold a lot of copies. Like, I'm trying to see what the actual numbers are right now, but do we know how much this game has made so far?
I would not have announced it if I were Bethesda. I got to be honest. I would not have announced that, because if the number isn't good, then that's embarrassing to them on a lot of different levels. And if the number is good, then a lot of people are just going to be super fucking heated about the fact that you sold this many copies and this game sucks. What the fuck, you know? So it's that is definitely an announcement that no smart business would have made. And considering that, like, we live in a world where dumb businesses like Telltale didn't announce their numbers, I can't imagine Bethesda would have.
No. So far as all I know is, as of right now, the only real sales numbers that we've seen are just like listings, showing that on launch it debuted in third place in the UK's all format sales chart behind Spyro and Red Dead Redemption 2. And the price drop is actually not the first price drop. So the $34.99 price is actually the second price drop, which is specific for the holiday. It originally price dropped a week later, $10 cheaper. So it went from $59 to $49, and then from $49 to $34. So they're citing poor sales as the reason for the price drop. I'm citing they realized that they should not have charged $60 for a game that's not worth maybe more than $15.
I mean, at the end of the day, the thing is basically the long dark Fallout edition, so I'm not 100% certain who was really looking forward to playing that thing in the first place. But the fact that it's also broken on top of everything else is like, oh, okay. Like, again, I would not have bought this game if A, it was not on a gratuitously large sale, and B, I didn't have a friend who was like, come play this.
Yeah, I'm bored, come play with me.
You know, that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
You got a friend that convinces you to play the game, but if I told you, like,
I would have told you to go fuck yourself.
Yep. You were telling me you were telling me that earlier this year when they unveiled Fallout Vault 76. Mark, we're gonna play this game. No, go fuck yourself.
Listen. I want to be clear. I like my friend Joel better than you.
That's why you invite him over more than me.
I invite you over. You're like, I can't. I gotta stay home with my kids and my wife.
I'm an adult. I can't play video games.
I invited you over like 3 times in the past like couple of months. And you'd be like, I can't. I have a family and I have to stay home with them. Plus, Joel lives like 2 minutes away from me.
That's a thing.
So it's like, you know, if I invite him over, he can just get in the car and be here. For you, it's like an hour fucking drive.
So if outside of digressing and outside of the fact that we like to rant about really obscene shit, I personally, okay, so you know, but most of the people who watch don't. I don't like Bethesda as a game company. I don't like the games they release. No. I don't like their franchises. I think they're uninspired. I think they're unoriginal, and I think that there are other games that came out at the same time of most of the Elder Scrolls games that, let's be honest, were far better games than the Elder Scrolls series games that released in those years. But that notwithstanding, I feel like they basically figured that the release of Fallout 76 was going to be okay as is, because they figured they're not going to hate it. It'll be fine. we'll let it be buggy for a few weeks. We'll patch in a bunch of stuff in a couple more weeks, and they'll forget it.
Yeah, their
Everyone
mindset was
bad.
pretty much like, we've released our last couple of major hits with some bugs, and it mulled over. Fans were like complaining about it for maybe a couple days, and then the patch came and they were all quiet. They probably thought the same thing about Fallout 76, but they didn't, I guess, play test the damn game enough, even in its beta, in its alpha test, or whatever you want to hell call it, before its official launch.
That's basically where this all boils down to, is that there wasn't enough QA testing. There wasn't enough people in the background, even in Bethesda, actually testing this game out in an online environment with multiple players to even stress test.
I have to get a hold of my friend Matt. He actually used to be a play tester, a tester for Bethesda. I think he left the company about just before the release of Skyrim, as a matter of fact. So I have to ask him, like, what was the process like back then, and I'm pretty sure it's probably somehow changed and got more mainstream, like just like escalated in terms of like review, like testing, and the review process or whatever. So
I don't know.
Like, here's the thing. I hate to be the wet blanket here, but you guys are talking from a perspective of, well, they thought. No, they think. And this is a crucial difference, because we're assuming that this is in any way going to have any meaningful impact on the long-term viability of Bethesda as a company. And I would postulate that it does not. See, there's this concept, and I think I brought this up before. I know I brought it up before in other places, but I don't know if I brought it up before on the show. There's this concept in risk management called reputational damage.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, the idea is you don't want to have a security event occur against your company because it will damage the reputation of your corporation. And if it does that, that essentially means that your corporation loses value in the eyes of consumers, in the eyes of investors, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Textbooks argue that reputational damage is a big deal. Certification tests argue that reputational damage is a big deal. And I don't think it is. And there's a lot of proof in the world that reputational damage just goes away. Mm-hmm. The RSA Corporation had a major breach, and like 1 million of their tokens basically had to be returned from customers who were using them for two-factor authentication. The
Mm-hmm.
government was talking for a couple of weeks, oh, well, we're going to, look into alternatives for two-factor authentication. And that went nowhere. The RSA Corporation is still the largest, or one of the largest, two-factor authentication providers in the world. The Heartland Group had the largest hack done against them at the time of a payment processor ever, because somebody put code into their back-end systems that was stealing transaction data for months, and they never noticed it. And they basically turned around and became, really deeply security focused going forward, and it has had no significant negative effect on them as a corporation. Sony got hacked twice. Mm-hmm. And the PlayStation 4 is the most popular console at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
The reputational damage is bullshit. It doesn't fucking mean anything. It's not real. If you keep making stuff people want, people will continue to buy from your company. And that comes back to the Bethesda thing. People are angry right now. Mm-hmm. Okay? People were angry when Fallout New Vegas came out, and there was a glitch where if you took on a specific quest, from the moment you took that quest until the end of the game, you couldn't enter a specific location, which was like a hub zone, unless you were wearing a specific hat. That game was unplayably broken for a lot of people. And nobody cares about that anymore. Fallout New Vegas is the best of the modern Fallout games.
Mm-hmm.
It is the best. That is its reputation. Nobody gives a fuck about the bugs. The bugs are like a funny footnote.
I give a fuck.
Exactly. It's a write-off.
Well, you're the only one. You're the only one. Everybody else, like Fallout New Vegas, is the best Fallout game. The best modern Fallout game. That is the reputation it has. You know, Knights of the
I would
Old
agree with
Republic 2 came out and it was broken and messy and terrible, and now its reputation it is the best Knights of the Old Republic game. You know, it's nobody cares what your reputation is like at that moment. This is going to be a thing where people are going to be like, this game is whatever, and they're going to be mad about it, and then in 6 months or a year, the game will get to the point where it's where it needs to be, and people will be like, okay, that's fine. Like, that's what happened with the original Destiny. Destiny 2, not so much, but I think people are just bored of Destiny in general. I don't think that's anything to do with the fact that it came out in bad condition. It's just people got bored of it. But there's no such thing as reputational damage here. Bethesda's not going to have any type of long-term impact from this. This is going to be, people are going to be mad for a few weeks, and they're going to fucking forget about it, just like they always do, and it's just going to be, oh, okay. And then Bethesda's going to patch it, and the people who are playing it are going to keep fucking playing it, and, like, it'll be as if it never happened.
Sure. So, like, all that aside, like, that's not my biggest gripe. My biggest gripe is the fact that we as consumers and as gamers buy this shit every single time. That we're willing to put our money on the line at full price for early access or early beta. For a game that, let's be honest, probably could have been far better and probably could have released in a hell of a lot better shape than it did.
But to be fair, at least we got a game, unlike some people who backed up a watch that is never going to come.
I would rather wait another year and a half for a more complete game than spend full price for early access for something that I'm only going to play once and completely forget about for the next 5 years.
I think he's trying to say that as his transition to the next topic because he's...
Well, not a transition. Not a transition, because we still got to talk about something else before that. But, no.
Okay, I was just saying.
I'm just saying, like, for me, my sort of end game on this is we as consumers need to stop buying into early access. It's just not worth the time. It's not worth the effort. And if you're hype enough for a game, in the first place, then be hyped for the game. Don't be hyped for the early access, which is basically bare bones. And if you're going to play the early access, don't charge me for it, because I'm not paying it. There's no reason to pay for something that you want me to test and give you feedback on. You should be paying me because that's what your QA testers are supposed to be for.
Yeah, I've actually never been a fan of the whole early access gaming nonsense when it debuted with on Steam a few years ago. I did buy into one game. I did buy into
early access as a thing for smaller companies is fine. You know, because there are companies who can't afford QA testers. You know, the people who made Darkest Dungeon probably can't afford proper QA. So, like, being part of the experience in that case at a discounted price is not a big deal. I spend $15 instead of $20, and I get to have a voice in this game to a certain extent. The big problem is that with the corporations who are doing it the way that Bethesda is doing it, is that you're not getting a discount, you're just buying a broken game.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't the case of, I bought into Fallout 76 for a discounted price, and I got to be, I got to see how the sausage was made. This is, I bought a retail game and it's broken as fuck. That's not even early access. That's just, we're assholes.
I mean, Street Fighter 5, what?
Yeah, they sold us a full price game, and it wasn't.
No, it was not.
They didn't even have a quarter of the features. You want to talk about a game that, was released way too early with so many promises compared to whatever.
But again, like that didn't have an impact. It didn't have an effect.
No.
God is dead, enjoy Arby's.
Don't have enough ducats? Perhaps your sandwich will suffice.
Yeah, I would say God doesn't exist because Sony just looked up at the video game gods and says, you know what? Fuck E3. Let's go do our own thing.
Well, you know what? That's not a case of necessarily saying that God doesn't exist. That's just them deciding that, we don't want to do this thing anymore. And to be honest, if we're going to that topic, E3 is probably a dinosaur in any case.
Mhm.
I'm actually surprised E3 is, to be truthfully honest, still running in any capacity at this point, because if I recall, the late 2010s, or what the hell is the decade called from 2000 to 2009? The aughts?
The
Yeah,
odds.
the aughts. I hate that name for the fucking love of me. At the end of the aughts, everyone was talking about, E3 in LA is in danger because of all the major changes they've made, and video game companies were downsizing their booths and stuff like that, while Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft, were spending shitloads of money taking away, show floor from everybody else. And a lot of companies were frustrated. And then you had other conventions like Leipzig and the other, what's the name of the other European
Gamescom?
Gamescom that were on the rise, and were getting rave reviews for their environments towards the gaming industry. And E3 just has pretty much been stagnant for the last several years. And Sony, it looks like it's just, they've had enough and they're going to go do their own thing. I mean, Nintendo pretty much said, you know what? We've had enough. We're going to do these Nintendo Directs. And it's been working out well for them. And I can see Sony doing something like that, to be truthfully honest. I don't see why they haven't done it before. Hell, Microsoft did something like that during the 360 era. Not exactly Nintendo Directs, but periodically they would release a video that you could watch on your 360 saying, hey, we got some cool announcements for you. Check this out. 5-minute video of a game or something like that. Sony, I don't know if it's going to be a catalyst so much for E3, just getting ready to flip the light switch off, but that's kind of a big deal right there for E3 to lose, Sony, one of the big people, to come in and rent out a lot of space. Even and not just that, but it's also the fact that E3 is outside of the convention center now. You know how they rent the concert halls and stuff like that for their presentations and their meetings and all that crap. And that's like a big local area business
It's a driver. It's a financial driver for the area.
Exactly. And then you lose a big client like that, one of the big three, to be truthfully honest. And then you have all the little companies, which, people will still come to these conventions because, they're still going to be, doing announcements for all kinds of stuff and whatnot. But E3 is just not what it used to be. It's not the place where people make huge announcements anymore. I mean, shit. I just read this earlier today that apparently there's going to be a new Alien game being announced at freaking the Video Game Awards. Nobody gives a crap about E3 anymore as, being that special enough, to make big announcements. And, I'm fine with it. What do you think, Mark?
E3 had its place, but I think Sony stepping away is probably a case of E3 isn't really as profitable as it used to be for its owners, obviously, because, look at the changes that they've made in the past few years. The biggest one, obviously, being the fact that the general public is now allowed to just come in and putz around and do whatever.
Yeah, it used to just be a regular trade show, just for business senses. Like for people in the company, in the game industry, like you work at GameStop, you can go to E3. Now it's open to the public.
Yeah, and it's two E3s ago. I haven't been in a couple of years, and I kind of don't. I wanted to go at one point, but now I'm just kind of yeah, whatever, it's fine. I don't miss it, I guess, is the simplest way of expressing that point of view. But 2 E3s ago, friend of the podcast, Hamish Black, went for his Writing on Games channel. And that was the first year that they implemented the people can come if they are part of the general public setup. And he pointed out that it was a fucking clusterfuck. It sucked, and it was awful. and it made it very difficult for him to actually do anything approaching properly trying to do something with criticism, with journalistic anything.
Right.
Not that he would call himself a journalist, but you get what I'm saying. So this past E3, they told him, oh, well, you can't come now as a creator because you don't meet our requirements. It's almost as if they opened up the ability for people to pay money to come in as part of the non-press so that they could start rescinding the access of people who had smaller channels and distribution outlets and forcing them to pay money to attend, figuring that they would do so because that's part of their business. And Hamish told them to go fuck themselves and just went to LA to spend a week with Nico. And I'll be honest, I would have done the same thing. I don't like E3 is desperately trying to make money because theirs is a platform that is not making money. In 10 years, E3 will probably still be around, but it'll probably, if it doesn't make some kind of a major change away from what it is, it's just going to end up being another Penny Arcade Expo. And I don't mean that as a compliment. I want to be clear. Nothing against Penny Arcade Expo. I don't think that's what E3 should be. But here's the thing. I see Sony walking away from that because, frankly, E3 isn't as valuable to them as it used to be. And that doesn't mean that E3 is damaged or whatever. They are still going to get lots of space from people who are trading on the E3 name or who otherwise would not get exposure anywhere else. Paradox is still probably going to rent out a booth. Natsume is still going to rent out a booth. And you're going to start seeing other companies fill in that space that Sony abandoned. Hell, fucking Epic is probably going to have a bigger booth this year than they've had any other year to date because Fortnite's a thing. So it's not gonna be an impact. Lots of companies have not attended E3 and it hasn't made a difference. Nintendo stopped attending a few years ago and it didn't make a fucking difference to
Well,
E3.
Nintendo technically stopped doing press conferences there. They still had a booth showing off their games.
Yeah, I'm sure Sony's still going to have something on premises. I wouldn't be surprised if this was just a case of them
Sony
not
said
bothering
they were
to do
just
stuff.
not going to be involved in it altogether.
If that's the case, okay, that's, they're still going to do something in the area. They're still going to be kind of sort of involved in the E3 hype, so it's not really going to change a whole lot. People are still going to show up in the LA area to do stuff, and they're going to attend a Sony something. If Sony straight out said, we're not doing anything at all that week, then I'd be like, oh, that's something worth paying attention to more. But if Sony's just like, yeah, we're not doing anything with E3, yeah, you're still going to have fucking shit going on, though. You're still going to cash in on the idea of E3 being a thing that exists. We know that you are. It's fine. You don't have to pretend for us. It's okay. But I just don't see it being a particularly big impact comparatively, just because it's, for lack of a better way of expressing it, they've had companies who don't do stuff before. Like, even if you have like a show floor presence, like they don't do anything with E3, and it doesn't matter. Sony doesn't really publish a lot of games internally that are, must-have, must-play type things at the moment. God of War was a big deal for sure, but I don't know that there's going to be a huge group of people who are going to be mad about missing out on playing The Last of Us 2 live on the show floor. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Like, I don't think it's going to have as big of an impact as Sony might think it will, or if they care at all, honestly. And I still think there's going to be a lot of other companies that are going to fill in that void. I don't think it's going to have an impact as such, because Sony's still going to do something in the area during that time period. off of E3's back without actually being E3, and other companies are just going to fill in that space.
Okay, now let's just assume for a minute Sony doesn't have anything planned for that week. Is there a possibility that Sony might pull a Nintendo and do something like, let's say, a Space World, or the Sony PlayStation Experience, like, a little convention of their own dedicated to showing off, their wares and enhancing the fan experience and stuff like that? That sounds like something they would probably do in Japan only because, they... Well,
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. So E3 for me, if I'm going to make any kind of a metaphor for E3, I think that E3 is basically a mall, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back to yesteryear in the 70s when the malls were a big deal. That's the same thing as what happened when CES and E3 split and E3 started. The object was basically to create an all-in-one encapsulated space for video game. At the time, you had a couple of big producers. You had a bunch of, two major consoles and a bunch of producers that all got together in a big convention center and showed off all their games like it was CES. That idea continued to evolve more and more and more and more, and it became more and more public, which I get. That's just sort of the nature of the evolution of the trade show. Eventually, you get to a point where you're not pitching businesses to other businesses, you're pitching business to the consumer. That's just where it went. Most trade shows are like that these days. So why E3 went that path makes sense to me. The thing I'm thinking about is like, so if you're going to equate E3 to a mall, think of it as a mall that has anchor stores. So you know what an anchor store is, right? Or like JCPenney's, Dillard's, those kind of stores, Macy's.
The biggest stores in the particular thing, right?
Right. And they generally are on the anchor points of the mall. So they're at the start points of a mall, and then all of the smaller stores are towards the center, which is just, it makes sense. That's how E3 is set up as well. You've got the big three, you've got Sony, you've got Microsoft, you've got Nintendo. When Nintendo said we're not going to have a press conference, that was them pulling their anchor store. But when they said we're just going to give you Nintendo Directs and we're still going to have a room on the show floor, that was them opening up the outlet. That's basically what that was. That was them turning their anchor store into an outlet version of the store. Sony doing the same thing makes logical sense. They don't need the anchor space anymore. They don't care. The reason why they're pulling out at this point isn't because they don't want to be at E3. It's because they literally have nothing new to report. What's the point in taking up all of this extra anchor space when so many other people can get floor space that way and not worry about that and do exactly what you said? Do some sort of offsite experience. It's what EA does. It's what Ubisoft does. It makes more sense for them to do that kind of stuff and have a specific area of the entire, grounds cordoned off to be just Sony. That to me makes more logical sense than trying to take up space not only on the show floor, but also having the press conference. I don't know that they're going to do a press conference this year. It's probably going to be the same thing that Nintendo does, which is they're going to put together a small 25, 30-minute video package of XYZ, here's titles, 1 through 4, here's 6 through 8. These are all the games that we're hyping for the next 6 to 8 months. Enjoy. And just sit back and let the footage roll.
It's also
maybe
worth
talk about one big specific game that happens to be like their crowning game, kind of like they did with Smash Ultimate.
It's also worth noting that we exist in a society that has dramatically changed in the past several years vis-a-vis how we communicate with one another and in what ways we can communicate information, to the point where we don't even need physical show spaces like this. Mm-hmm. It's no longer a requirement to do a trade show like this, because you can get data directly to people's phones, directly to people's tablets, directly to people's faces.
Right, exactly.
Just through the internet. So Sony doesn't, nobody needs to do E3 unless they're a smaller group that aren't going to get a lot of eyes on their product to begin with.
Right.
Sony and Nintendo don't need something like this because they can just
the market share is there for them to not need to worry about it.
Right,
because
exactly.
This is basically like saying, hey, I'm going to go to the mall because I got to go to the Apple store. This would be the same thing as basically saying, hey, I'm just going to go to the store and go to GameStop. Because the GameStop is still going to have the Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft presence already there. It's an all-in-one stop shop. But like I said, it's like opening up the outlet store. I don't need to go to the mall to go to the Microsoft store when everything that I want at the Microsoft store can also be purchased at GameStop or Best Buy or any of these other smaller shops that probably need the space, that probably need more of what it is that E3 has to offer them versus what the three major console companies have to worry about at this point. Because, like you said,
thanks, Jen, for reminding me. I have to go to the Microsoft store sometime this week to get my Xbox 360, my Xbox One's Blu-ray drive fixed.
There you
Thanks
go.
for the reminder.
See, that's a thing though. That makes more sense. Like, you go to them for specific hardware things. It's a hardware company that you go to for hardware problems. It is not a hardware company that you go to for software issues. Mm-hmm. That's what the internet's for. That's what the patching is for. That's why they have an 800 number. The thing about it is that there's so much there's so much consumer being able to just consume everything digitally or being
so
able
much
to
for
consume
them to digest.
things. Well, no, because I can consume so much more content on my phone, on my computer, on a refrigerator. Let's be honest, it's a thing. That it doesn't matter anymore. The stuff that matters now is not about. The only reason that the big three should be at E3 is if they're announcing new hardware. Okay? Let the smaller companies have press conferences to release their games and then have them tell us what platforms it's going to be coming out on. That's what it's to. That's just what it's come to at this point. And to not have something like that is kind of crazy, especially considering the fact that we have things like Penny Arcade Expo, Gamescom, Tokyo Game Show, Leipzig, Game Developers Conference, Video Game Awards. I mean, for crying out loud, the Video Game Awards announced like 4 big announced games that they didn't announce at E3 that blew people's minds when they finally got information about it.
And let's not forget the Video Game Awards themselves used to be reliant on a degree of television presence being on Spike. Now they just stream that shit.
Exactly. So, like, all of this stuff is purely just based on just how things have evolved in consumer culture and media. Because has it not been for the advent of the smartphone, we wouldn't be playing waifu collection gacha games. Had it not been for the concept of we want video games to be treated as a medium that makes sense and be rewarded the same way that movies and music are, we wouldn't have the VGAs. If it hadn't been for the fact that we're such a mobile and mobile-dependent culture at this point, E3 would be one of maybe only 2 ways that anyone would ever know about any big announcements from any companies at this point. But because these game companies are coming out with early accesses and Steam, and you've got headlines on the consoles and pop-ups on websites and ads literally everywhere we go, like you said, I mean, having E3 as a trade show and not basically just a 48-hour just deluge of content and video and trailers, like, to me that makes sense. To have physical representation makes sense, but at the same time, there are so many less people wanting to go that are not already in the area unless they're part of that content or they're part of the company that's making those games. No one really cares about going to Anaheim or going to LA to go to E3 or to go to any of these other game shows, because 99% of it's either going to get leaked or streamed live when it actually happens. So why don't we just do boardroom meetings with all of this stuff in the background and not worry about it anymore?
Yeah, I do agree with the comment made by Azazel6390 that the VGA shouldn't really be an event to announce new titles, because that's kind of a case of the video gaming industry desperately wanting and craving the attention that mainstream platforms get but not really understanding how to properly deal with stuff in that capacity, i.e., they want their own video game award show alongside, like, like the Grammys and the Emmys and stuff like that. But they don't really get how the Grammys and the Emmys do business. So it's, here's the Dorito Pope doing a stream where he's selling his soul to fucking Mountain Dew for 45 minutes. And, we have like a robot that's based off of like a Schick razor dancing around while we're showing off awards from like the 6th biggest budget games that came out in this calendar year, and seriously having a category for the best narrative to come out in video games and putting a fucking David Cage game in there with a straight fucking face.
But at least we don't have
on
Anna
top of
Nicole
all that-
Smith accidentally dropping her top.
That would be an improvement.
Yeah,
I mean, she's dead, so maybe not, but it still might be an improvement. But, like, they're also looking at it as, well, this is an opportunity for us to market and show off new things. And they don't understand how these other industries work. They want all of the respect and success these industries confer, but they still behave like fucking children. It's very much a case of video gaming as a medium. Everybody involved in it has the biggest fucking inferiority complex in existence. And you would think being worth billions of dollars and like having large publicly traded companies would be enough for these people, but no, they want to be perceived in the public eye as being big and important, but they don't know how to do it.
I don't know. I think that at this point, it's more of akin to, like I said, it's more of akin to the idea of E3 being like a mall, and that's not having specific stores in that mall doesn't mean that the mall is going to close. But what it does mean is that the content, or the stores in this case, that we might want to go to means we just have to go somewhere else to get it. And if that means we end up just online watching it all the time, or getting content delivered directly to us via some sort of a digital download, so be it. That's really where the market's headed. That's really where, game shows like E3 are headed at this point. It's people go to E3 because they want to see what's new. They want to see what these companies are going to bring out in the next couple of years, and they want to know what it's going to look like.
Right.
Playing it is fine. I mean, if you get a chance to play it, woo, that's great. It's playable on the game floor. But let's be honest, that's all people are there for. They're there to play the games, the new games, or the games that are just about ready to come out that haven't quite been finished but are basically in a fully playable state. That's what people care about. And if we can't do that at home, and we can't go to Anaheim, or we can't go to Tokyo, or we can't go to Gamescom to actually play these games on site, then what's the point?
Hey, remember there used to be a period of time where game companies used to release demos? I know it's hard to believe, but they used to let us play games long before they were released.
Yeah, Hubs, they call it early access now.
I know, you have to pay for the demo now.
Price.
And you have to pay them for that demo.
Yeah, my thing is, E3 at this point either has one of two ways that they can go to continue to exist as a thing. The first thing is that they can rein themselves back in and attempt to be the trade show that they always were, which is going to require them to cut out the fucking all-day fan passes. It's going to have to be for media and for media alone, and they're going to have to figure out ways to generate income however it is they're going to do it, or they're going to have to become, PAX or Otakon or just a convention where video game people show up, because the current model that they're doing is ultimately untenable. There's going to be a lot of other companies before the time is out who are going to say, we don't want to broadcast our stuff with the general public. That's not what the message is. That's not what we're here for, because the general public, sorry, sucks.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like, we have situations where, like, a trailer will be released of something and the general public will lose its fucking shit. The Spider-Man puddle thing as a prime example. So letting just, John Q. Public go in and play a demo that's meant for journalists, that's meant for people to do a general write-up on, to get like first impressions on, and giving it to, fucking PewDiePie or Markiplier or Ninja or whatever,
Right.
is going to get into a situation where people are going to be like, this is bad.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Oh, well, but I would have to say at the end of the day, I mean, it could be a good thing in regards to Sony, branching off, doing their own thing. Like you said, this could be something that E3 will take notice of if it, actually has some kind of like impact on them. We have to wait and see, to be truthfully honest. It would have to be at least a few years in order for us to see what happens. So like if, let's say, not just Sony leaves, but now Microsoft leaves, and then let's just say Ubisoft and Activision and all these other people who, take lots of floor spaces, ups and leaves, E3 might, either fizzle or have to completely reorganize themselves. And that would be interesting to see. But we have to move on now before our
You know
night.
what would be interesting to see at E3 again? Atari.
Speaking of Atari, yeah, this has not been a good year for the rebranded Atari. Whole thing has been going on. I mean, we had Jeff here a few months ago explaining to us this whole fiasco going on with the Atari VCS. And apparently they had a Kickstarter going on for a watch that lets you play retro games on it. Why this exists?
I do want to be fair.
Why
like
do people want to play this? What's that?
That looks more like, I want to be fair, that thing looked more like it was something where Atari was attached to the brand rather than the brand actually being an Atari thing.
It might have been, yeah. I do believe they actually renamed it and they took the Atari name off of it, but they are still, like, I think, in control of it because they just sent out a message claiming that the project was actually going to take longer and would require more resources and money than they actually had. And as a result, they had to cancel the project, and nobody's getting their refunds.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it was on Kickstarter, so Kickstarter should be able to intervene on behalf of everybody else.
Except that Kickstarter makes it pretty apparent that, like, this isn't a fucking pre-order.
Mm-hmm.
You're not guaranteed your money back.
Yeah, but
Like
they're not like a company like Indiegogo, which takes your money out right away, pretty much, and just says, you know what, hey, you gave us your money, you reap what you sow. Kickstarter usually has things in place for, problems like this. I mean, there have been, like, let's say, numerous board games that have been canceled and people have gotten their refunds for them. There's been a few, like, video games that have been canceled that, some people didn't get their refunds for, some people have. Something of this magnitude, I think the watch only managed to make $500,000. So who knows if there's going to be even an intervention by Kickstarter to, give people the refund. But I guess it's a wait and see. But this doesn't, in general,
this is frustrating to me. Just as a side note, that people look at it as, well, I want to get my money back. Kickstarter is not a fucking pre-order service, okay?
No, it's not.
This pisses me off to no fucking end. Kickstarter is not a fucking pre-order service, and people need to stop acting like they are owed their money back. You are a venture capitalist when you are investing in Kickstarter, okay?
Yeah, that's
you
all
are
it
putting
is.
your money into something that may not even exist, and you need to accept that. If your money doesn't come back, that happens because that's what you are investing in. That's what you have chosen to, put your money into. That's going to fucking happen sometimes. And it's deeply frustrating to me that we're in a position where people are like, oh, well, like, I was owed my money or whatever. You're fucking not. You're absolutely fucking not. And we need to get to a position where that stops being a conversation. If the company fucks off with your money, like, okay, if they do something illegal with your money, that's one thing. If they just couldn't get the project off the ground, you invested your venture capital there. But if this person said, "Oh well, we're going to make your thing," and then they used it so that they could buy themselves lunch for the next 6 years, yeah, then at that point you have a fucking case.
Yeah. In essence, yeah, you're putting money into a pretty much a project you may never see the light of day. I've backed at least 4 Kickstarters, 2 of which have been fulfilled. One of them was I just donated $5 to a video game museum out in California, and I just actually got my reward for the Tomb Raider OST orchestra suite, which beautiful soundtrack, by the way. That took about 3 years to get. Next one is Shenmue. The other one is Indivisible. I mean, Indivisible has been in development hell for 5 years now? 4 years? It may never see the light of day. Whatever. Shenmue 3. Yu Suzuki can come out next week and say, you know what? Silver dropped us. We don't have the ability to release this game. Oh well, my dream is dead. I mean, I put money into something that I thought would, deserve, a chance to see the light of day. However, Kickstarter is not so much something we're talking about. It's Atari and how Atari continues to do questionable, skeevy shit. And how they manage to... I mean, you were just talking about earlier, Mark, about how market reputation... I think Atari at this point is doing pretty good amount of market damage to their own market English is hard. Is doing damage to their reputation right now as a company that's regrouped under some new owner, trying to get this VCS off the ground, and then all this side stuff they're trying to do, like the watch. And when they go off and they screw something up like this by saying, "Oh, sorry, we didn't plan this properly. We're gonna have to axe this." English. I just lost my train of thought. But go ahead, Jan.
Look, you can't ruin a reputation you don't have anymore. It's gone. You lost your reputation in the late 80s when you decided not to continue in the console market. Atari is not a household name anymore. It's a reminiscent. I remember when I had to take this big bulky 8-track cartridge and stick it into a wood-paneled console to play 4-bit games because that was how we played video games back in the 80s. It's not, hey, look, Atari's coming back with a retro console. It's not Atari games, it's brand new content. And I'm like, that's a console. That's a brand new console. That is not Atari. That's an Atari name on a console that brings you new content. They've kind of sort
of improved themselves a little bit as time has gone on from the death period, but then they went and shat the bed with that all over again.
Right.
One of the things people haven't talked about in a while, which is part of Nintendo or Atari, rebuilding their brand, the roller coaster tycoon game that they've been talking about. I haven't heard anything about it in about a year. Is anybody else here?
I don't play the game. I don't pay attention. It doesn't matter to me.
Okay. Case in point.
I am more of the so I'm more of the idea that it isn't a reputation that they can hinder or hurt when they don't have one in the first place. Where Atari is right now with whatever it is that they're building, a watch, a console, I don't even know. At this point, I don't care. And the reason I don't care is because it doesn't involve anything that I feel makes any sense to not just myself, but to gamers in general. I feel like bringing a new console to market as is right now with current generation technology doesn't make a lot of sense at all. Plus, you start putting out these other side projects that, let me be honest, I had no idea they were even making a smartwatch, okay? So you're like, hey, Atari canceled their smartwatch. I said, hey, Atari did a what now? Because I didn't know. I had no fucking clue that this was even on the radar, let alone even a thing that they were even trying to sell to people. And like Mark said, this is not a pre-order group. This is not, you're not walking into Best Buy and saying, hey, I want to get this thing that comes out in 6 months. That's not what this is. This is more of a matter of people want to bitch about buyer's remorse. Because that's what this is about. It's all buyer's remorse. They know they're not going to get anything from Atari. They just want to bitch. This is a McDonald's lawsuit for burning coffee all over again.
I really hate to be that guy, but aside, that lawsuit was because McDonald's keeps their coffee specifically about like 3 or 4 degrees higher than it's supposed to be. The coffee was being held by an older woman between her legs who was already partially disabled and spilled it and got like 3rd-degree burns on both of her legs. That was a legitimate lawsuit. And I really am not going to stop until we all fucking understand that was a legitimate lawsuit because McDonald's basically almost killed this person and she only sued for enough money to get the reconstructive surgery to get her legs fixed.
Fair enough.
Fair.
But you understand where I'm coming from.
I do. I just wanted to be clarified that like that was a legit lawsuit.
Right. No, and I'm not trying to say that it wasn't. But what I'm saying is that we're in this frivolous lawsuit territory area with people constantly saying, oh, hey, I didn't get what I wanted from Kickstarter, I want money back. And the company going, sorry, we spent it and we have no way of getting it back to you. And we have nothing to show for it because we didn't get enough backing. We couldn't do it. So we're done. Sorry. But all we did, we put it into this. We've put enough stuff into what we've currently worked on that if we can get the rest of our money from other avenues, we'll more than happily fill what you requested. It's just you're going to have to give us more time, and people are like, "Well, no, I want it now." That's like saying I want to flash fry a cow and inject it with cheese and actually assume that it's going to come out edible because we fucking know that it's not. And
that's a funny image, right?
This entire idea of old companies, new companies, your brother trying to, buy out. Like, this is the same reason why people think that when you spend money, you're always going to get something. It's kind of like saying, like, I'm going to go to a doctor and have them get a prescription, pay for the prescription, but then not take the medicine because it didn't quite taste the way I wanted it to. This is like saying, I'm going to spend money on a Kickstarter for a guy who said, I'm going to make potato salad. And then he got enough people so involved with the process that it went viral and made enough potato salad to feed, I think, 35 people in his local area and have leftovers enough to give back to a homeless shelter and still have enough money left over for him to do whatever he wanted with. I think he had an extra $3,000 to just do whatever with because that many people bought into it. Did they get anything out of it other than maybe some pictures of the potato salad? Nope, that's about it. But that's a thing that happened. And that's
all they wanted.
Right. But see, the thing is that we come from a place that a guy making potato salad and all you get is a picture and that's what people wanted versus I'm buying into a $300 video game console that now I'm not getting. Like, where's the middle ground here? Where is the idea that what Atari is doing, or whatever they're calling themselves these days, and they're trying to make something and they can't, and now all of a sudden there's this weird outrage for something that people knew outright that probably wouldn't actually get made because, let's be honest, wow, how many people actually knew they were making this watch? Like, honestly, if you were to go and look at the demographics, how many people actually bought into this and how many people actually knew that this was a thing? I read news sites often. Not a single one of them had anything to say about the fact that Atari was making a video watch, making a smartwatch until after it had already failed. And they were closing it down and people weren't getting refunds. Because the news articles only talked about saying, oh yeah, hey, by the way, Atari Watch is a thing. And everyone's all like, I'm sorry, what? Why? Who cares? Oh, wait, that's right. Nobody, because it didn't get off the ground. That's the problem here. It's that people are so crass about the consumerism that they think that literally everything they spend money on is going to return them something. And I'm like, no, that's not the case. That hasn't been the case for ever. You're never guaranteed that whatever it is that you think you're spending money on is going to be exactly what you think it's going to be. Or in some cases, especially like you said, in venture capitalism, because that's a thing that's been around for who knows how long at this point, is probably a hit or miss situation. That's why they don't give business loans to every single person who asks for one, because certain objects or certain types of businesses are not going to be fundamentally viable.
Okay.
I still don't understand why you couldn't just make this watch do what it did. Like, this person running this has to be like just really, really bad at the core idea of figuring out what to do with a smartwatch in general, because like all he was promising was a smartwatch whose only feature is playing video games. And I'm like, all right, just put some fucking Game & Watch games on a goddamn smartwatch and you're done. Like, how is that hard?
Okay, so this project, obviously, now we've established that Atari, in some capacity, distanced themselves by taking their name off of this smartwatch. But as we know, like consumers who are expecting something, obviously who aren't too smart to begin with. Do you think this is going to hurt Atari with their little comeback plan for the VCS at all?
No, nobody gives a fuck about Atari.
No.
You don't give a fuck about Atari, even if you think you do.
I haven't given a shit about them since the early 90s.
Yeah.
Well,
Nobody does.
no. When they published Neverwinter Nights, I gave a shit. But that was then.
You didn't care about Atari. You cared about Neverwinter Nights. There's a difference.
Well, they published it, so
right, but you wouldn't care. I mean, for crying out loud, let's be honest. EA probably could have released that game, and it still probably would have been decent at the time. So it doesn't matter who put their name on as the publisher. You cared about the fact that it was a relatively decent way of being able to play Dungeons and Dragons on your computer. That's what people cared about. They didn't care about Atari.
I'm grasping at straws here. Come on now.
Don't. That's what I'm getting at. Don't. Atari is old. People don't care.
Yeah.
A smartwatch failed. Technology fails on a daily basis, and most people don't care. The fact that this is even newsworthy drives me crazy, because it's like, who cares?
I mean, here's the thing about this topic with the smartwatch and Atari and all that stuff. People are making it a bigger issue than it really is, because hey, let's get views. Atari, it's the big red button to push because they think it'll give them attention. This is really something I personally didn't think this was going to be a big topic. I mean, right now I'm struggling to find things to talk about. Hell, we've been spending more time talking about Kickstarter than the damn thing.
Because that's where a lot of these problems come from.
Yeah,
Hubs.
yeah, it is. Yes, I agree with you on that. But the thing is I think this topic in general really is a non-topic, because this is something that I think the YouTuber community has pretty much blown out of proportion. Like, okay, the Atari VCS, I don't give really two shits about that, but everybody else, I mean, and I like Jeff, you're awesome and all that stuff, but you're blowing this whole thing out of proportion with calling it a scam and all that stuff. I think it either comes out or it doesn't come out. That doesn't exactly make it a scam.
It could be, like, the thing is that it could very well be grift. Like, yes. I don't think he's blowing out of proportion by calling it a scam necessarily, because there are a lot of grifters who are going to try and make every last dime they can off of the corpse of some type of dead, whatever.
I mean, it's not on the same level of a scam like what At Games did with their console that they're trying to release, after Sega dropped them.
I mean, no, but it could very well just be them saying, "Hey, we're making this thing," and then they never make this thing, and they just run off with the venture capital money.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. That is always a possibility.
That
But
that plays into the same thing as like the guys who the team that made Tiny Metal that were supposed to make some sort of ridiculous RPG project that they ended up spending most of the money on making Tiny Metal and still haven't given anybody anything else on the actual RPG. That's the grifty shit. That's shifty. That's side arming.
yeah.
That's bad. But something like this, it's like, who cares, man? Another fucking smartwatch failed to kickstart. Ooh, that happens literally every month.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, I don't care.
Right.
But let me just side this and finish it off with, I would buy a new Dreamcast. So fuck you.
I would too.
I would buy like a Sega Classics collection that was like a dream shaped like a Dreamcast that had all the Dreamcast games in it. A brand new Dreamcast, I don't know. I'd have to see some actual games for that. But
you know what? I originally wanted one of the topics today to be about the conspiracy theory stuff from that discussion I had with that dude from Sega United on YouTube.
Oh, the Sega Earth or
Sega United guy about the
yeah.
about all the projects and claiming that Sony stole the plans when they were in collaboration with Sega before they made their PlayStation. I really, you know what?
Let me just say right now, that dude is a numbnuts. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He likes blowing smoke up other people's asses because he thinks like he knows what he's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But when presented with real facts, shuts the fuck up because
I even asked him for sources. He hasn't provided any other than saying, this one interview, which is I can't find on the internet, by the way, and he can't reveal all of it or because it's under NDA.
No, it's not.
Bullshit.
There's only
that's like that guy.
That's
like that kid who you fucking. That's like that fucking kid that you would go to school with. He'd be like, "My dad works for Nintendo."
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And
there's only two ways that's under NDA. You either work
and I
for
thought
the
it would be an
company that
interesting
is
topic
NDA.
of conversation. And then I asked him, "Hey, you want to be on a podcast? You want to talk about this? I like to hear some of this stuff. You know, maybe some little tidbits of history we don't know." He's like, "No, only way this will work out if you pimp out my project." Which is what? Oh, Project Razor. What's Project Razor? Oh, we're trying to get Sega to make consoles again.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so
why would I want to do that?
Talking to you, so please go away. Yeah. Why would I want to do that? I wouldn't want to waste my time talking about that. Like, do I want Sega to make a new console? Sure, maybe, kinda. Do I think it would do well in the current market?
No.
No, not really. Would I rather than continue to concentrate on the games market that they've been working on for their first-party developed Sega-specific games? Yes, absolutely. Because so far, most of those franchises have been revived and are running and are playing very well, I might add. Thank you very much. Mm-hmm. Please stop making 3D Sonic games. Continue to make them like Sonic Mania, and we'll love you for a while.
Or at least make them more along the lines of Sonic Colors if you're going to do 3D.
Thank you. Absolutely. I don't need more Sonic Adventure bullshit. I'm over that.
Mm-hmm. But all right, that was a fun little divergent at the end of the conversation. So with that, end of the show is here. So let's do our little round table. What has everybody got going on, Jan?
Not much. I'm changing up some stuff for the stream. Mostly just because I actually have some more room in my room now, so I'm actually able to do a few more other things. I'm adding in a VR night, which is going to be fun. So I'm actually going to start doing Beat Saber once a week, which is like, I can't wait because I was finally able to get a bunch of stuff. My Wednesdays has basically turned into Waifuist Dungeon Wednesdays, which is pretty funny. I've got a bunch of different anime waifu mods specifically for Darkest Dungeon, so we've been running that on Wednesdays, and then Fridays is kind of like my generic night. It's just kind of whatever I feel like playing on Fridays. I'm getting back into 14 again because there's a lot of new content that's be coming out pretty soon. The announcement for Shadowbringers, the new patch and expansion that's going to be coming out in early summer of next year looks fan-freaking-tastic. They spoiled one of the new classes that's actually coming out in a current content Stormblood patch, which is Blue Mage. So that'll be interesting. I'll probably set some time aside once that actually hits in the next couple of months to actually get a chance to actually play Blue Mage, probably on stream. But other than that, no, really nothing's changed. It's pretty much just Monday, Wednesday, Friday is pretty much consistent, unless I'm like not feeling it and don't stream.
All right.
Other than that, not really much else.
All right, Mark. So, what's happening with you, and when is that damn video coming out?
I have no idea. I'm still working on it. I have a stream coming up Saturday. Should be a board game night. Then I'm back to the regular schedule of streaming on Saturdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time till whenever I stop. So this Saturday should be a board game night. I am just waiting to get confirmation from one more person before I definitely say that it's going to be board games. And then the following week should be video games again.
All right. I have a couple things. Rico, my buddy, is coming out of college soon, so 3 Vets and a Do will resume with more PSO2 action. Hopefully on Thursdays. Don't know what it's going to be when the next semester starts, when he goes back. Last night, my buddy Reggie came over and we just recorded our first episode in a while of game adaptation reviews. So I'm hoping to have that video out next week. Got a lot of editing to do, trying to make a 30-minute video and make it 20 minutes, because I think that's the sweet spot. There's going to be some jump cuts, and I'm not really comfortable making jump cuts. But you know what? Got to start somewhere, right? And the movie we reviewed is Street Fighter Alpha. So I forgot how real bad that movie is, but watch the video next week. You'll get the review. Also, what's happening is this was the second to last episode. So the final episode of GVN for the year before our winter break is going to be the 11th of December, one day after the 25th anniversary of Doom's release on the PC. And that'll be a Doom dedicated episode. And it's going to be a lot of fun. I'll see if we can try and do something special, or if not, we'll just do a boring roundtable talk. So, anyway, I want to thank you, Mark, Jan, for joining me tonight, and to everybody else that tuned in out there, thank you very much. Y'all have a wonderful night.